Welcome to our World Today live discussion. That's okay, but it happens sometimes. Today, us three are going to talk about several things that happened this week. A lot of geopolitics, a little bit of climate change, and a little bit of culture and history, maybe. Nadia, would you like to talk about what our plan is a little bit?
Yes, I believe we're going to start off talking about Finland and how they closed off the borders to Russia. And there we're going to dive into Sweden and the burning of the Quran and seeing how the prime minister and the leaders had responded to that. From there, we'll discuss a bit about Henry Kissinger. He had passed away and his legacy and how we feel about that. And if we have time, we will talk about COP28 and how the world leaders had discussed climate change.
Yeah, thank you. So, Sage, you researched a little bit around Finland and the situation at the border with Russia. We knew that by joining NATO a few months ago, there would be like some movement here. We hadn't heard a lot until what you shared last week about it. So would you like to enlighten people that don't know about the situation a little bit?
Yeah, basically, Finland has like 8 border checkpoints along its border with Russia. And they say that in the recent months, like since September, they've gotten an unusual amount of asylum seekers, like migrants, trying to cross the border from Russia into Finland. And the migrants are actually, at first, because the articles I was reading were so like, they weren't very specific, they were just very surface level. I thought that they were people seeking asylum from Russia, but they were actually people seeking asylum from like Yemen, Syria, Afghanistan, and places like that, like mainly in the Middle East, or also Somalia and places close there. And yeah, basically, so there have been 1,000 asylum seekers coming to the Finnish border with Russia since September. And apparently that's a lot for Finland, to experience that. And like the country only has like 5.6 million people, so it's a, in terms of population, it's a smaller country. Their like allegations toward Russia are that basically Russian government guided these people to come in large numbers at once all to the Finnish border to try to antagonize Finland and like destabilize Finland, like politically, ever since Finland joined NATO recently, basically. So, but like in November alone, 900 people have come to the Finnish border, right? So when I said like since September, there have been 1,000, actually 900 of those were just last month. So like, they know that something's up. They know that something is unusual that's going on, because like, yeah, in all these countries where the people are coming from, there are ongoing crises. It's not like something happened all of a sudden. So yeah, they're saying the Russian border patrol people guided these people specifically to Finland. So they shut down 7 out of 8 border checkpoints completely. The only one open is the northernmost one in the Arctic, in Lapland, and which to me seems like they're saying like I think they're obligated to keep one open at least because of some sort of agreements about like taking in asylum seekers, but they try to make it as inconvenient as possible, you know, because like it's pretty much winter, and yeah, it's like near the Arctic Circle or in the Arctic Circle. So this checkpoint. So yeah, that's what they're doing, and what they're saying is Russia is doing this, and other European countries have reported this too. In the past, like Russia has supposedly brought migrants in or encouraged them in, or asylum seekers, I'm going to put in quotes, from Belarus have sometimes like come into Poland or Lithuania or stuff like that. People say that it's in Europe, say that it's strategic, because anytime like a bunch of migrants come in, especially, you know, from like the Middle East and such, it causes political instability, because I don't know, that's what they're saying. That's what they're saying. So I don't know about that, but I know that Russia has been accused of things like that historically for a long time, like during the Soviet Union times. Apparently, some people say that Russia strategically populated different Soviet republics with Russians just to increase their political influence there. Like, I think Russia does have that background of like doing almost anything that they can to try to politically destabilize others and mess with Europe and stuff. But I wasn't totally sold on the story either, so I just wanted to get you guys' feelings about it, because I just don't know. It kind of makes me, it made me kind of scratch my head. So yeah, thoughts, feelings.
Oh, thank you for the details. I also thought that it was more Russian migrants trying to go into Finland and, escape the war. That's how it had seemed once you were reading it. But I'm glad to know that it's something different. I'm just feeling and wondering, how could this destabilize Finland? You know, like if they were to bring in more people, how would this be kind of like a dysregulation? Maybe because they had to create camps for them, more space, more resources. But aside from that, I can see the benefits of it as well. How you guys feel about that?
Yeah, so that's part of it too. So like in this article I was reading, like Finland and other European countries basically say like when, you know, when like more like migrants come into the country, it increases people's sometimes people have a lot of discomfort with that. So they become more supportive of like far right candidates, basically. And you saw that in the Netherlands. We've seen that, right? Last week we talked about Geert Wilders, who got elected. So that's what they're saying. And the thing is, far right politicians in Europe generally, like Geert Wilders and Viktor Orban and other like far right people, they're generally more supportive toward Russia. So that's what they're saying. Yeah. So I don't know. But
That's I don't know. I'm guessing I can definitely understand Finland. Like, who are these people? Like, we don't have anything to go on with. Like, are they like spies? Are they truly refugees? Like, why do they go up to Finland in order to enter like slowly approach like European Union territory or something like that? We don't really know. And I can understand how this is like worrying, because like it's a sudden influx. Like it's not like the actual people, it's like the influx in the last month, I would say. So yeah, it's a bit weird. I'm not going to lie, because like the refugees in themselves, like they they don't change much, and they only seeking asylum, so that's okay. That's the motive behind Russia that can be, I guess, worrying. And also, of course, like you're in Scandinavia, and it's different from other countries. Like it's usually very calm. Like immigration is very, very regulated most of the time. Asylum is like a very, it's like it's in terms of proportion, like in percentage of immigration, even illegal immigration, it's not um the one that is used the most. Well, there are refugees, but it's kind of I can see how it's weird, and how it could worry people politically. How are these new immigrants going to be received? And yeah, so yeah, it can do a lot of damage, and it can basically participate in the polarization of a country on some things. So I think that's why it could be worrying. And also, like 900 people all at once, I guess in the future they could say like, hey, what's going to happen? Like, are we going to have like 1 million people trying to enter afterwards? And maybe that's blowing it out of proportion, but the countries that the people leave from are so much more populated than Finland itself. And Russia too is so much more populated. So what do they do? And maybe like it's not final close of a border. It's just something in waiting to see like, all right, what's Russia's plan here, and what do we do with these new people, and what do we do if we keep having an influx of new people like we've never seen before? And yes, I can understand, wanting to like have a safety net and regulating this as much as as we can. Also, like I don't know if we'll have an answer on this today, but isn't it weird that, military coup and public opinion of Europe in Africa have been in correlation for like a few months, and we know some of the misinformation or some of the encouragement towards instability has been followed by Russia. And we also know that the next story is like Sweden and Muslim communities being in some sort of like social media fights because Russia is following this misinformation. So Finland, and I guess the secret services may be saying like, all right, like is this linked? Like, is this happening to us too? Is this part of a plan? And yeah, we can't deny that this is happening a few months post beginning of Ukraine war, and a geopolitical change for Finland. So I would say, of course, we're going to worry, because there's a lot on the table there, a lot of like mysteries, things that are unsolved. And I would ask myself a question too of if it's Russia. But yeah, I'm not sure. Like, I wonder like how were the articles presented? So the articles seem to think that it's Russia's fault, or were they only stating that um the asylum seekers were coming from Russia?
Um, I only saw in the article that that's what the Finnish government said, but I haven't found like proof of that, but they're saying, so there's a couple things. The first thing is that for those people to be able to make it to Finland, they have to go through like all the way across European Russia. And like it's a massive part of the country. Like so what they're saying is like Russia had to let them through. Like the Russian border people or whatever could have detained them and stopped them, but they allow them to go through. So that's one thing. And the other thing too is that apparently this was a weird detail too, but like, okay, a lot of the details are really weird when it comes to, I feel like Russia. These people, the migrants were given bicycles to ride over in the Arctic, through the Arctic snow. They were given bicycles, and there's a photo at that border crossing in the far north of Finland with this big rack of bikes. There's a big rack of bikes in the photo. Apparently they were given these bicycles by Russia's low budget government, like to ride into Finland. Like, I don't know. It just seems, it's weird. Do you know what I mean? Like all these details are like very weird. And so it kind of all points to the Russian government being involved, but in a very like low budget way. I just wanted to add that in because I was like, why are you giving people bicycles to cross a border checkpoint in the Arctic Circle? Like, what are you doing? Anyway, so yeah. So do you think we can conclude that the Russian government probably was involved, or no, not from that alone?
I think we could. I think we could. I would agree with, I guess, like public opinion on this one. It's pretty hard to cross a country as big as Russia on your own. And it can take months, years. You may want to like, rest at some points, like have an apartment, things like that. And it did not happen in these cases, and they were given bicycles. What?
Yes.
So yes, I think Finland's paranoia is kind of justified, not that it will come to anything, we don't know, but I think it can be justified in the context of like everything that happened in the past few months. But I don't know, Nadja, what do you think?
Yeah, if anything, the bicycles revealed that like Russia had aided them in continuing their travels, like to keep going. And it really makes me wonder how long they were at the Russian border and if there was any plan with them to provide this transportation and to give direction to Finland. That's something that I'm wondering. And yeah, like you said, it is justified for Finland to be like, what is going on? Why is this drastic increase in migrants into our borders? And to see that there is like Russian bicycles given to migrants is also very much showing that like all the fingers point to Russia. And I really want to know what is Russia's response to this. I'm not sure if you guys saw any response to Russia of this.
Oh, yeah, there was in that article. I'm trying to remember. It was something to the effect of like, just denying responsibility, basically. Like
Okay.
just their typical response. Like they're just like, we have nothing to do with this. They just,
Oh, we give them bicycles, but that's all
They
we
usually
get.
do that. They usually do that, yeah.
Yeah.
They usually do that around that. Yeah, it says Russia denies the allegation and is yet to respond to the entire border closure and things like that.
Okay.
And of course, like Finland was in fear of like instrumentalized migration, posing a serious threat to national security and public order. Again, like we don't know, like imagine like there is an Uzbek spy in one of them, like we don't know. So yeah, that's justified. And I think in order to like what happened inside Russia, I don't know
Right.
if we'll ever have an answer around that.
There
So
must have been checkpoints throughout the entirety of the journey. Like,
I mean, yeah, but we won't know. We won't know.
it's definitely justified though.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is hard to know any of the details of this. And I do think that yeah, like Russian influence on the Western world and the rest of the world is intentionally made that way, I feel.
Mhm.
But yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah,
They
and it kind of
deny, yeah. They deny responsibility when there are spies and there are very spies in other countries and people die. So,
right.
I mean, I don't think we're going to say like, oh, okay, it was us on this one.
But what are they spying in Finland for? Like, what information do they need from Finland?
Do we spy in Finland or is Finland like an entry point to the rest of-
Go to the rest of the European Union and everything.
We don't know again.
Well, they could be curious about like what Finland is doing as part of NATO or something, and they could be desperate too, diplomatically, because I mean, not diplomatically, on the spy front, could be kind of desperate because they had a bunch of like people who were like some sort of diplomats in quotes all throughout Europe. And then they were all expelled like shortly after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and their identities were shared internationally. So Russia often would put people in other countries under the guise of them being diplomats, like saying, "Oh, these people are some sort of diplomats," and they would actually really be spies. And so now that their names are revealed to all these countries, Russia can't use a lot of those people anymore to try to collect intelligence. So that was like a crippling blow to them, apparently. So
Yeah.
I think they could be desperate, like just trying to be like, can we just get some people in there, like into the European Union? And yeah. So I'm sure that they're not totally out of like intelligence gathering people, but yeah, it could be.
Okay. Well,
Yeah. And given Russia's disregard to outsourcing and, getting multiple countries involved into their army, like Cuba, this could be plausible that they're using multiple, like huge numbers of people to continue in whatever kind of plan they have. But of course, we don't know the complete details, like factual details on this.
usually the best spies for a country are not of the nationality of the country because it helps their cover even more. So that could be, but that's very like Cold War tactics. But then again, Russia is kind of always Cold War tactics still. So yeah. Yeah, I think yeah. That's it. We won't know more for now, but it's certainly interesting to try to see Russia move. Like, we can feel that it's kind of fishy still, even under the guise of like, oh, we don't know why these migrants were there. And so with that, we could move into talking about Sweden, the neighbor,
Yeah.
and the problem that they've had in the past year since some guy burned the Quran, and how Russia is trying allegedly to continue sparking the outrage on social media from Muslims to Sweden. There's something that you have to know. Like, there's a huge population of people of color in France, and there's a huge population of Muslims, and I work with Muslims, friends with Muslims, things like that. Like, they're everywhere, and it's their country as well. There are Muslim communities, but French people. Even in these communities, in some of them, I would say the most, sometimes the most radical, not in the sense of violent, but in the most like radical, you see their consumption of social media is pretty much, one-sided, in the sense that they have access to, well, they go on Telegram, first of all, and Telegram is stamped with Russia's name and misinformation circles. But like, all of the algorithms are geared towards information that takes the side of Muslims. So, and sometimes make misinformation to spark outrage from people of color, because it's not just Muslim. It can be like Black people too suffer from that. Indian people a lot too. And basically what I see is that they have access to a side of information or misinformation that is very, very, very radical and sometimes false. And I think it is dangerous. And I just remembered, I literally just remembered while talking that they are all on Telegram, and Telegram is Russia, Russia, Russia. So I think it's not, I think it's not surprising to see how much maybe hatred has been circulating on some things. But basically, like, Sweden is taking fire right now. When Swedish football fans were in Belgium, there was a terrorist attack against them and solely against them. And this weekend, there was a terrorist attack in Paris, and a German tourist was attacked and died because the guy who was like mentally unstable, right, but was linked to a jihad terrorist cell, said that he thought that France's involvement in the conflict was taking the side of the traitors, which was like Israel. And we know there has been a lot of misinformation on both sides. And so this is like next level, like, political instability. Like, this is next level political instability that leads to terrorist attacks. And honestly, like, this happens like around me. Like, this happened like 40 minutes away from my home, in the neighboring city, in the neighboring country, which I live like 5 minutes away from. I to be honest, I'm not super neutral right now, because I am outraged at the misinformation that has been around since like, you know, Cambridge Analytica. Cambridge Analytica was used like not only in the USA, but in so many countries in the world in order to spark like tensions and separation and polarization politically, to a point where like extremist people, leaders were put into place, or like terrorist attacks happen. And so in my heart, like we really gotta, I mean, there must be a way to end this, because, you know, I have students that are Muslim and that have access to that, and they're so young and they see violence and they're pushed to hatred and separation. And in my heart, I feel like at this age, you shouldn't have that much hatred. Like, you shouldn't be pushed to take sides in that way. You shouldn't be the instrument of instrumentalization. This doesn't make sense to me, but yeah, that's my view on it. What do you guys feel about that?
Yeah, it's really heartbreaking, because I know the stabbing happened really close to the Eiffel Tower. And to think that like tourists, anyone walks around there at any hour of the day just to visit, and to be violently attacked like that is so like unsafe for someone, and to think that it might be able to happen. And the misinformation that is spreading around, any type of misinformation that is main aim is to create diversity and to create like segregation and separation, should not be further ignited and should not be further spread. And it's unfortunate that one little ignition, like one little flame, can be such a wildfire into not only misinformation, but hatred, like something and an illusion that creates into fearfulness and creates into hate and hate crimes. I'm really glad for the response that Sweden's leadership had did about, you know, not only condemning the burning of the Quran, but also saying that this type of information is what is creating segregation, what is creating separation between people, when really it's a time to be of unity, regardless of religion and ethnicity background. So not only is it up for the leaders to respond in a more dignified and unified way, it's to also heal that fearfulness that is coming through and through on not just the ones that are being attacked, like Sweden in Belgium, but also those that are attacking. Like, we've talked about otherness and the fear of otherness in several of our talks, and it will be a continuous conversation until it is fully healed on both sides. And it will also be a continuous conversation about one party, one religion cannot have humanity if not all of the people have humanity. So it cannot just be one aspect of it. And to use Israel and Palestine as a excuse to condone violence and to continue like hurting people is not an excuse. Like, you're seeing that there's violence and something going on in another country. That doesn't mean that you need to now take action and do something in accord to that, in accord to violence. And I see that here too in New York City. There's been so much misinformation when it comes to Israel and Palestine, and people are in such heated discussions and such like hatefulness, like even walking down the street, like looking at someone of a different ethnicity or a different religion, thinking that they are the problem, they is what caused all of this heatedness. And it's really a whole veil of illusion that needs to come down and needs to look into the core root of this, of our oneness.
You spoke straight to it. Yeah. Because it's like you're feeling hurt, so you're using like defamation and hating on a group of people, but hating on that group of people because you think they hate you is causing another group of people to ridiculize against you because they're feeling attacked. And so in that sense, the fear and hatred and anger that you express are manifesting into reality. And so it's really like the best, I think it's the saddest and best example at the same time of how our choices are like manifesting into reality. And yeah, that's a pretty, that's pretty heartbreaking, as you say.
And people think that it makes them strong to fight and to stand up for what they believe in. But the true reality is it makes you completely strong when you stand up for everyone, including yourself. When you stand up for love, that's what is required of such strength. Like we are filled with illusions on top of illusions and media where it tells us one thing, but your true strength will come from listening to what is actual love. By feeling those feelings of hatred of another kind because they may be hurting, your people, and actually realizing that no, I choose to love them. I choose to love them and I choose to heal and continue in seeing where this love will take us.
Yeah, yeah, and I feel that Russia, to like bringing it to the whole like Russian manipulation type of thing. Russia knows that in Western countries and like in Europe that there are these tensions, and it knows that some Europeans have been uncomfortable, right, with seeing people with like different religions than what they've historically practiced, or different cultures, or different, ethnicities. They know that there's discomfort there, and like some of the population is accepting in that way, and some of the population feels less so. And so I do feel like they just try to exploit that, and they just try to fan the flames of it, and they try to just deny responsibility and obfuscate it. And it's just interesting, like they're claiming, they've been doing this since the times of the Soviet Union. Like they always claim to be the advocate of like they're anti-imperialist, like they're anti-Western, anti-imperialist, and you should like align yourselves with us because like we oppose the imperialist oppressors. Meanwhile, Stalin or meanwhile the Soviet Union or Putin, like it's like that's like the definition of oppression. I mean, they have their own, flavor of it, let's say, right? And so they're just being very tactical there. And I feel like it's important for European countries I feel like it's just more of a call for them to like spiritually and emotionally and psychologically face everything that's going on in the country. So yes, Russia is trying to fan the flames of these conflicts, but these conflicts already exist in all these European countries, right? So there already are people who are taking one side or another, or who are uncomfortable with migration, or more and more people who practice Islam coming into their countries, and there are people who are okay with it. So that's for them to work through anyway. Like that's their thing anyway. Russia's just trying to exacerbate it. And I think the same is true with like in Sweden, like we were talking about, apparently, I'm not totally certain about this, but apparently some Russian oligarch or the Russian government was connected to the far right groups in Sweden who burned the Quran like months ago, back when Sweden was trying to join NATO. The goal being to get Turkey, the Turkish population, just angry with Sweden to try to keep Turkey from approving Sweden joining NATO. And we can see that that didn't work. There were some sort of backroom dealings that caused Turkey to reverse its position all of a sudden. But you can see how, like, yes, maybe Russia is like trying to like fan the flames of like intolerance and divisiveness, but like it's the European countries, it's their challenge to work through anyway, and they're not going to, Russia isn't going to win. I think it's really important not to give power to them, and like don't give power away to them. You can acknowledge that they're attempting to influence other countries, but don't blame it all on them, because it is your own issue, like as a European country to work through. And don't give power to Russia, because yes, like what they're doing is not, it's not aligned with love in any way, despite they love to like take every side of every issue and be like, oh, we're very humanitarian and we advocate for the, you know, whoever, like third world countries or people of color, or, you know, colonized peoples. But then, you know, it's just not, we know that they're not gonna prevail because they're doing fear and separation. So those were my thoughts on it, because I feel like Russia wants you to be scared, and it wants you to be mad. It wants you to like get involved in the drama and be like, oh my God, Russia's influencing us or influencing Europe. Oh, and point the finger, but you shouldn't be baited by them to do that. Shouldn't be baited to do that. So that's how I felt about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'm really glad you called out the bullshit in Russia, because they do like to hide and point fingers. And of course, it is the issues within their countries that they like to exasperate. But in a sense, you're calling out like Russia saying that they're taking the straight path when really they're taking the crooked, narrow, and wavy path. And we're trying to bring that into the limelight.
So it's funny because, and it will be a transition too, that's absolutely perfect. Because during the Cold War, they were accusing the US of like, and the West of being everywhere and colonizing everywhere, but they're doing the same thing as being everywhere, not giving free will to countries. And so yeah, a lot of projection. We already knew about that, right? But a lot of projection. And so in that Cold War vibe of tactics and energy, we kind of want to mention that Henry Kissinger has passed away this week. And I think, yeah, he has a history, a certain history tied to the US. So a lot of people have had a lot of strong feelings about this. And the main thing for which he will be remembered is his involvement and management of the Vietnam War. So yeah, that's a lot on the one person already. So yeah, how do you guys feel about that as US citizens? Like, do you have an opinion about that? Like, even like you're allowed to not have an opinion, but I'm curious to know, like, how has it been for you?
Yeah, I don't know much about him, but I did read that one quote that he said that it's either an American decision or a humanitarian decision. And from that quote, I kind of saw what his intentions were with his decisions. And it kind of showed through with his tactics and his consultation with US politics. That's as much as I know about him and my feelings toward him.
Oh yeah. Are you talking about that thing where yeah, he said like, so apparently at some point when he was like serving in the US government, Russia was like a more hostile place for Jewish people, apparently. Like the Soviet Union. And I don't know the details of this, so don't ask, or you can ask, but I won't answer.
I forgot the context of the quote.
I think that's the context of the quote, where so basically some people within the US government were advocating, hey, we need to like pressure the Soviet Union to allow their Jewish citizens to emigrate to the US because we need, because remember, like during the Soviet times, people were not allowed to leave the country without the government's approval. So it was often difficult to get that approval. So people in the US, some were saying, let's pressure the Soviet Union to allow their Jewish citizens to just leave and come to the US. And yeah, and this was during, I think during the Nixon times. And the quote is from a conversation between Richard Nixon and Henry Kissinger that was declassified. And he's saying like, basically like, this is not an American issue, but it is a humanitarian issue, you know? So he's basically saying like, America has like no interest in, or maybe even obligation to like, I don't know, trying to put pressure on the Soviet Union there. And I thought it was interesting, and Richard Nixon apparently was said like, yeah, like we wouldn't want to like start a war or anything over this. And forgive me because I don't know the context. They were like talking about it in terms of Henry Kissinger is apparently saying like, if something similar to the Holocaust happened in the Soviet Union, we should just not respond to it. Like, that's too bad, but it's none of our business. And we're not going to start a conflict with the USSR over that. So, and I was like, I have never been aware of the Soviet Union being that oppressive to Jews, but I'm aware of it always being oppressive to Jews, but not to that degree, you know? So I was super confused by that, maybe because I'm just not well informed in that area. But yeah, I don't know what vibe you guys got from that, but it could also be, is it a case of being like, we don't want to like take responsibility for other people and cause excessive conflict, or is it a case of like just being cold and callous and trying to make your life easier at the expense of others? I don't understand.
No, I think this is one of the things where you gotta have a little bit of, you know, take a little bit of a step back. Like there were pogroms. Pogroms are like persecution of Jewish people all over Eastern Europe and most of Europe for in the centuries before, with a lot of them happening in the 19th century, which leads to a lot of like Jewish families immigrating to the Americas in order to like save themselves. And so a lot of like Jewish people are from this immigration, and some of the Jewish people are from the World War II immigration if they were survivors of the Holocaust. And so Kissinger, being himself a survivor, I think was very sensitive because that's a trauma that happened like a few decades ago, 20 years ago, to the fact that it could happen again. And Jewish people didn't have a super good time under the Soviet Union, but we don't think that it was to that extent. And even if it was to that extent, it was under Stalin, and Stalin wasn't there anymore. So yeah, step back. I think Nixon was like, hey, you know, at that moment in time, we don't have intel on something like that happening again. So yeah, Kissinger is like to close it up a little bit, because we do need to talk about COP28. Kissinger is yeah, Vietnam was horrible, but he was under Nixon, so yeah. And he was also like a World War II survivor. So very, very I don't know, contradictory man, or that saved himself and went into the American system, and you know, got the best of the American system, and did things to people in the international politics of the US. But I don't, yeah, I don't want to like say that he was a good man or bad man. I don't know much about it, because this is not like my country, but I don't think the horrors of US international politics can be solely on one man. It was like more of like one man managing this, and yes, managing this quite badly, but in his time, where a lot of his peers were you know, managing this as well, on this as well. So yeah, that's yeah. He passed away, he passed on. That's something. People have feelings about it, I guess they're upset. But yeah, it's like kind of like Oppenheimer, like, you know, one bomb cannot be the invention of one man. There was a whole team behind him, and yes, he was a leader in this team, but he was a scientist. So there's a whole more to it than just it. And I think what we're learning today overall is that, you know, the upsets of everybody cannot be placed solely on one person. And as horrible as it is, and of course, like, that doesn't mean that we certainly love Kissinger, but that also means that maybe it's time to make peace with ourselves. To live peacefully and freely doesn't mean that we're weak. And I think that's what we're learning right now. So yeah, that's a little bit of on COP28. I would say like a lot of people don't want to like abandon fossil fuels, but also COP28 seems like the path for a lot of media to just like punch on everyone and say that this is bad and we are rotten, and they don't focus on. I've seen like one French media out of all the medias I've read saying that the Ukraine was like calculating the cost of climate, you know, environmental cost of the war, and going into like renovations, green solutions to renovations. And that was the only one. The rest was like, yeah, blah, blah. It was in Dubai, and there was a lot of lobbyists, and Australia is not ready to give up fossil fuel, and China is not ready to give up fossil fuel, and everyone is like not agreeing, and the decision is going to be weak again, which maybe it will. And young people are pretty absent, but a few of them are making a lot of noise, blah, 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 blah. So yeah, I wonder if this has become like a punching bag event instead of like a solutions event. Yeah. I would like to be optimistic and say like at least someone is trying, but I'm not sure. You know, if there are a lot of like fossil fuel lobbyists there, I don't know if there is a lot of trying, but yeah.
Well, yeah, you're right. It's hard to know, because yeah, like I guess if you look at media coverage, they're probably focusing mainly on like stuff that people may perceive as like going badly. So then they can like play on people's, yeah, anxieties or desire for drama or whatever. But yeah, there's probably more positive going on than we know, or definitely some stuff that we're just not aware of.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, it was. There's a lot to talk about from there. Yeah, it was interesting to hear too about like they were trying to create targets for reduction of methane, and China was like kind of opposing that because they get so much of their energy from coal and they do so much coal mining that coal releases methane. So you'd have to, I guess, reduce coal mining really to reduce methane emission in for them in their country, and how they may be like kind of slow to adopt that new standard, but like they do eventually adopt new standards once most of the rest of the world adopts a standard, then China can change because they see an economic incentive to do so, you know. I thought that was an interesting story there. So yeah, but we don't have too much time to talk about it, but you could say a lot about all the stuff going on there.
Yeah.
Yeah. What did you guys feel about it? I think.
Yeah, there was a fundraiser for countries, third world countries that couldn't afford to support themselves after climate change devastations like Pakistan. And so far, I believe they have like 400 million, but the devastation that occurred in Pakistan was around like 40 billion. So it's like they just started this pot. Hopefully, other countries bid more sponsorship, but it kind of shows where they're at right now. 400 million compared to the need of one country is 40 billion. So there is a large need, and there's not enough support when it comes to financially. So that could be telling of how it's going. And one thing I wanted to mention about China is their health crisis with the people in China because of the pollution, because of their, I don't know if they have any cap regulations, but because of their e-regulations, the health crisis is just getting to a point where, like, if you go to China and you're in breathing their air for a day or two, you will cough up like smut and black stuff because of what's going on. And doing research there, it shows that there is a inverse proportion. Like if the economy is doing well, then the people in China are not complaining about their health. But if their economy is doing poorly, then they start complaining about their health and they start talking about climate change and regulation. So it really goes down to how China is portraying their economy to their people too, because it could be very poor and they're just saying, no, no, it's good. And we don't need any changes in climate change, but you see the health side effects of it.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I think we definitely need to go deeper into that. Some community members have sent us documentaries to watch around climate change too. So I think I'll look forward to discussing a little bit of that more. And we're coming to the end of the year, so we're going to like see how the year went and what we can talk about next year and expect next year. But for now, I'm going to thank everyone that watched us live and everyone that is watching us from YouTube. And if you like that discussion, yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe so we can do more. and see you next week. Bye bye.